Our final reader of the night is Paul McComas. He's the author of 4 critically acclaimed books, 2 novels, Planet of the Dates, which is currently in development as a Hollywood feature, and Unplugged, and the short story collections Unforgettable, Harrowing Futures, Horrors, and Dark Humor and 20 Questions, now in its 3rd printing. As he is also the editor of 2 anthologies, First Person Imperfect and Further Persons Imperfect. He recently co-authored the novel Logan's Journey, slated for a 2012 publication, with William F. Nolan, best-selling author of the science fiction novel classic Logan's Run, and is currently editing an anthology of place-based fiction called Proving Grounds. Paul has performed his own work at 90 venues nationwide and on National Public Radio. He has taught widely, and he lectures nationwide about literature and writing, in part through Chicago News and Views Speakers Bureau. Please welcome Paul McComas.
Thank you, Sarah. You're going to supersize me? Do we still have time after that intro? Okay. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Bill. Thank you all. And thanks to my fellow readers tonight, too. What a fun program, huh? Yeah, the new book is Unforgettable. I titled it that so that every time someone mentions it by name, I get a blurb. McComas' new book is Unforgettable. Just have to get the right people to say that, and I can slap it on the 2nd edition. It's a pound and a half, 500 pages. There's a lot of violence in here, and you could probably kill someone with this book. If you have to. Self-defense. So I'm going to read you some of the shorter pieces from it, and start with this one. It's called Harry and Sally versus New York. During the summer of '89, I dated an attorney named, well, let's call her Claire. We had a fair amount in common. We liked each other, were attracted to each other, had engaging conversations, and yet it wasn't quite right. Something just wasn't matching up. She was several years my senior, but that wasn't the problem. No, it wasn't that Claire was too old, it was that she was too normal. Still, there was enough that was working that I told myself to ease off and give it a shot. One night we went to the local Cineplex to see When Harry Met Sally. We both enjoyed the film, we both laughed a lot, though I noticed we were laughing at different parts. And it wasn't that she was laughing at the female parts and I was laughing at the male parts. No, it wasn't nearly that clear-cut. During the famous fake orgasm in the restaurant scene, Claire nearly chortled herself into unconsciousness. While I couldn't get past the implausibility of Sally's behavior, given how guarded and borderline uptight her character had been up to that point, I, on the other hand, snickered uncontrollably throughout the Surrey with the fringe on top department store karaoke sequence. Come to think of it, I seem to be the only one in the theater doing so. Still, as I said before, Claire and I both enjoyed the movie, so I told myself as we watched, that's a good sign, right? Anyway, as the end credits began to roll, we rose and stepped out into the lobby. There on the wall in front of us was the framed promotional poster for the film, which I happen to have a copy of here. Billy Crystal and Meg Ryan chatting with one another while absolutely towering over a tiny, ankle-high rendition of the Manhattan skyline. I placed an arm around Claire's waist and gestured toward the poster with my free hand, saying, "Can you imagine how different the movie would have been if they had actually been that size?" Claire just looked at me. So I went on. There they would be, standing around having their neurotic little conversation about relationships, but every time Harry shifted his stance or Sally tapped her toe, 100 people would be instantly killed. Pretty soon you'd hear little sirens, the mayor would have to call in the National Guard, maybe a ballistic missile strike. Claire shook her head and said, "No one would ever make a movie like that." I shrugged and said, "I would." She looked away and said, "Okay." I glanced back over my shoulder into the cinema we had just exited and caught a glimpse of the screen. The end credits were still scrolling, but clearly they would be over very soon. Thank you. It's a little poem called The Coin Cafe, and it's based on an automat in an office building in Appleton, Wisconsin, where I was in college back in the early 80s. Remember the automats? This one was called The Coin Cafe. It had an awning out front leading into the 6th floor hallway. And in fancy cursive, it said, The Coin Cafe. My friends used to hang out there and joke about who would be cheap enough to take a date to the Coin Cafe. So, your daddy's got his placemat out and his pen. He's drawing charts and diagrams to prove his point. Business has been bad of late, he contends. Perhaps that's why he's taken you to this cheap joint. I'd love to help you out, he patiently explains, but commodities have bottomed out. The market's gone insane. I'd help you with tuition, but it's something I can't do. When lunch is done, he'll soak in his brand new jacuzzi pool. Charity begins in the mirror, then moves on when there's not a cent to pay in the Coin Cafe. At a nearby table sit Tim and Polly. Where is the romance that should be in their eyes? He proposed an hour ago, she accepted. Now they're very much engaged in eating Hostess pies. Tim had popped the question while they watched HBO. Blazing Saddles set the stage for this modern Romeo. Then intimate dining in a setting so serene, all 3 courses neatly falling from a vending machine. Love may be many-splendored, but it loses out to Frito-Lay in the Coin Cafe. At the doctor's research lab, Pam assisted, hoping that his probing might continue after 5. Though her boss seemed unaware, Pam persisted, needing his acknowledgement to justify her life. At last he asked her out, and he took her, you know where, with some loose change in his pocket and a sauce elsewhere. On the way to the cafe, her glee was so hard to conceal, but now she's feeling like a lab rat pulling levers for her meal. If you bear the bite of the selfish, then it's clear that you have made your way to the Coin Cafe. Have a lovely stay. Thank you. This is called Stephen King's latest. A mountain resort, a classic car, a St. Bernard, a prom, the metabolism of a lousy driver, a misspelt doggy graveyard. What hasn't this guy haunted? Scare-wise, it's a law of diminishing returns, even as the books seem to get longer, and thicker, and pricier. Where will it all end? Perhaps here, by day and by night. In a gnarled, wind-beaten orchard on the outskirts of town, it took root and grew. And grew. Jeff Parker had heard the talk about that patch of land. He knew it was supposed to have been an old Cherokee burial ground, but it was on his property, so he had planted there anyway. And lo and behold, when they sprang up out of that much-maligned soil, his squashes, pumpkins, carrots, and other vegetables were all perfectly normal. All of them, that is, but one. New in hardcover from Viking Press. The master of modern horror's most terrifying tale of all. Gourd! Now available in bookstores everywhere. 680 pages. $36.95. Thank you. This is called I've Been Dreaming of You. Every 3rd or 4th night we dared and chased and cajoled each other down a nasty black corridor and into a room where we threw taboos against the wall just to hear the sound they made breaking. Remember, dear? And every 3rd or 4th night we bit off a little more than the time before, and a little more it seems than either of us could swallow, though we chewed and chewed and chewed, and in that room there was no fade out and no dissolve as we tore the very core from each other, painted the ceiling and floor with each other, sucked each other in through every yawning pore. Then once the need had left, we laughed. But ours was joyless laughter, wasn't it? We were beyond humor, beyond reason, way beyond hope, barely sane and drunk with pain. And now a single wound remains, a long tapering gash. Every morning I inspect it. Sometimes at work I close the office door, unbutton my shirt, and I check it then too, because it changes from day to day. Red to purple, deep to shallow, straight to jagged, wide to narrow. It changes, though it never quite heals. So it starts to. Yeah, it tries. The winsome waitress at the trendy tapas bar smiles and says she likes my jacket. Where did I get it? Later she tells me her name, gives me her number. When I go to bed, I check and see the edges drawing together, trying to mesh, straining to knit, a translucent web of thin new skin bridging the gap, and I think, maybe it's leaving, maybe tomorrow, maybe. But then I awake and my hand finds the spot, and the wound is as open and moist as before, and nearly as sensitive too. And it doesn't take long, dear, to figure out why, for I know I've been dreaming of you. Thank you. This tour is sponsored by Sharpie brand pens. All right. It's the shortest story I've ever written. It's in Unforgettable. Oh, we didn't hear that, did we? Okay. Silence. This is called The Most Terrifying 3-word dystopian / dark fantasy / horror story ever written. President Sarah Palin